Welcome, everyone, to the Retro Chat. I'm Andy Evans. We are coming to you live this week, talking all things Star Trek The Next Generation. In fact, what we're talking is not just The Next Generation. We're talking the pilot episode, Encounter at Farpoint, because on September 28th in 1987, that episode premiered. And we're going to get to all of the good stuff, give you some background trivia, give you some information, talk about the casting, talk about the plot, talk about why Star Trek The Next Generation is so popular. But before we do that, let's get the messaging out of the way. If you would like to join us on social media, you can do. All you need to do is go to Facebook or Instagram at Retro Chat Podcast. You can tweet us at Retro Chat Pod, or you can continue to join us right here on the YouTube channel, which is Retro Chat Podcast UK. If you'd like to subscribe to the audio version of the show, where not only do we give you brand new content each and every week, but we also do From the Vault, which could be an archived interview from the past. It could be an episode of Legends and Champions. It could be the Masters of the Universe Chronicles. It could be anything from the vault, from the days gone by. Then subscribe to the audio feed on Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon, TuneIn, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeart, you name it, we are there. All you need to do is search for retrochat.co.uk. Now, before we hit the main show, one thing that I really would like to invite you all to do, and that is to join me October the 27th at 8 p.m. GMT for Quiz Night Live, which is the Trivia Master Challenge. Now, we're doing this in aid of a charity here in Dorset called Julia's House, and they provide care for terminally ill children and their families across Dorset and Wiltshire. Why is it important, you might be asking? Well, quite honestly, the pandemic has really scuppered all of the fundraising activities that any charity can do. But their kids and their families. And what Julia's House do is give them the best end of life they can. They make it special. They make it mean something. And I want to do my bit to help out. So before we crack on with the show, I'm going to play a promo, going to play a video, which you'll hear the audio on the archive, which gives you more information about Julia's House.
Julia's House is a children's hospice. We're here to provide care for children who have life-limited and life-threatening conditions. We provide that regular breaks for the families to just allow them to get on with their lives and cope. It may be that we're looking after the children in the hospice, but it may be that we're looking after them at home as well. A couple of hours every week just to give the family a little bit of a break, or the kids come in here for a day or for a whole weekend.
We try and make the sessions as fun as we possibly can. So we have a playmaker, and we have people that will organise activities very specific to the children that are coming in, but allowing the children to access as much of the hospice as they can. And it is about making memories and having a good time, and we hope that's what we offer, and I think we do.
We want the children to be bursting through the doors with a smile on their face. We want them to be excited about coming here. We want to create some happy memories for them and for their families, and we want them to be able to play where they're not limited, where they're not the odd ones out, where they can use the equipment that we've got that allows them to play like other children do.
It's just been such a lifeline, because with a baby like Chloe, you're isolated from the outside world, so just to have some friendly faces come in on a regular basis is just something I look forward to. I know I can rely on them, and that Chloe's going to be safe with them, and that maybe I could take Chloe's sisters out whilst Julia's House are at home with my daughter.
Great work there by the team at Julia's House, and quite emotive as well when you see what they do. So I implore you, please join me October the 27th at 8 o'clock GMT for Quiz Night Live, the Trivia Master Challenge. It's going to be 5 rounds, 50 questions, a bit of everything. Entertainment, movies, TV, pictures, specialist rounds, you name it. All of the proceeds that we raise will go direct to Julia's house. In the link in the narrative of the episode, both on archive and here on YouTube, will be a link for you to be able to join us live right here and watch it and interact. But also will be a link to the Just Giving page. Please dig deep and support this wonderful charity for the work that they do, not just for the children, but for the families of those that need help. Okay, I am going to keep this up on screen throughout the entire episode now. October 27th, 8 o'clock, supporting Julia's House Quiz Night Live Trivia Master Challenge. Now let's talk about what it is we are here to talk about right now. And that is Star Trek The Next Generation and the encounter at Farpoint, the pilot episode. Now, it was created as the spin-off. Originally, the original series aired from 1966 to 69. Then there was meant to have been Phase 2. Phase 2 was going to be the resurgence. That was going to come out in the 70s. That never materialized. Instead, it became The Next Generation. Gene Roddenberry took on creative. He created the show. He had Rick Berman as his executive producer. And this episode, Farpoint, was written originally by renowned Trek writer DC Fontana. Paramount then went to Roddenberry and said, no, we want it to be a 2-hour pilot, not a 1-hour pilot. And Roddenberry took the script from Fontana, added extra scenes, and took credit. Now, she put a complaint in to SAG, and they intervened. That's why it's now a dual billing of written by DC Fontana and Gene Roddenberry. And the series, as we all know, is set in the 24th century, following the adventures of the crew of the Federation starship Enterprise D. And in this particular episode, the crew of the ship examine the mysterious Farpoint station, which the Bandai are offering to the Federation, whilst under the gaze of a powerful entity known as Q. The episode was made as a pilot for the series and was a double-length episode, again, as we've said, at Paramount's insistence. After the show was announced on October the 10th, 1986, Roddenberry put together a production team, which included members from the original series, such as Bob Justman, and the show used some existing sets and props from the films from both the original series and from Phase 2. New actors were hired for the pilot, which in some cases required the character concepts to be redeveloped to better fit the actor. Most notably, that involved Marina Sirtis and Denise Crosby. They were hired for the roles of Marcia Hernandez and Deanna Troy, respectively, but were later switched by Roddenberry. And Crosby's new role became Tasha Yar. In one of the most emotional scenes of the pilot, DeForest Kelley, now 130 years old, agreed as a cameo. He joined walking down the ship with Lieutenant Commander Data. It was a passing of the torch. It was a passing of the baton. And originally, Roddenberry had gone to Leonard Nimoy to see if he would do it. But negotiations fell through. So instead, they went with DeForest Kelley. So let's give you just a little bit of trivia about this. Because when you talk about DeForest Kelley in the cameo, Bob Justman said it came about as a result of a meeting between Gene Roddenberry and Dee. It had been on Gene's mind. He invited Dee to lunch and he said, how would you feel about it? Expecting DeForest to say no. In fact, Dee said, I'd be honored. And he did it with just the basic SAG salary. And it was actually historic because it also marked the final television appearance before his death on the 11th of June, 1999. If you forget his appearance in the DS9 episode Trials and Tribulations, because that was archived stock footage from the original series. And DeForest Kelley filmed his scene on the 2nd of June, 1987. Amazing, wasn't it? I remember watching that episode and that scene where I just got goosebumps because, you know, I've said before on this show and on Two Men that I was a huge, and I still am a huge Star Trek fan. I used to remember watching it at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday evening on BBC Two with my father, and we watched Farpoint, and we were hooked right from the word go about this new series. And then we saw D. Kelly walking down the corridor with Commander Data, and instantly just went, that was such a cool moment. And I'm looking forward to watching Farpoint with my daughter and telling her about the original series and the characters and who they were. Not sure my wife's going to appreciate that, but hey, daddy-daughter time. That's what you need. Now, originally, Patrick Stewart was given the role of Jean-Luc Picard, but that was against better judgment. The cast, the characters, the production team, they didn't want him. They didn't want a bold, middle-aged Brit to become the captain of the Enterprise. Rick Berman supported the casting, but DC Fontana thought that an American actor called Stephen Max would be a better consideration. And Stephen Max, if you look at him, was actually very, very different. Chiseled face, full head of hair, which would be, you know, the most key thing for what he did. Now, he's actually appeared in Star Trek. He appeared in DS9 as a character called General Krim in the two-parter episode The Circle and The Siege. So he did make it to Star Trek, just not as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't actually imagine anybody else portraying the role of Captain Jean-Luc Picard without it being Patrick Stewart. Now, that makes sense because Patrick Stewart, you've grown up with Stewart. We've grown up with him embodying that role for over 30-odd years. But it's him, right? It really is him. Patrick Stewart didn't think the show was going to get taken on. So for the first couple of years, he lived out of a suitcase. The next character that they cast was Commander William T. Reicher, the first officer of the Enterprise, which went to Jonathan Frakes. Now, he went through 7 auditions before claiming the role. Despite being the second choice of the casting team, he was hired after their first choice, who we don't know who that is, was unimpressive in his auditions. LeVar Burton had worked with Bob Justman on another pilot for a series called Emergency Room, and was suggested that he applied for the role of Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge. For US audiences, he's most well known as the actor in the role in Roots. Gates McFadden and Brent Spiner gained the parts of Beverly Crusher and Commander Data, respectively, through the standard audition processes. Gates McFadden, of course, known for the Muppet movies. Brent Spiner is a bit part comedy actor. Eric Menyuk, who became known as the Traveler in 3 subsequent episodes throughout the series, had originally been considered for the role of Data. Marina Sirtis, the UK's own, auditioned for the role of Masha Hernandez. Denise Crosby auditioned for the part of Deanna Troi. They both gained the parts with the approval of both Berman and Bob Justman, but Roddenberry switched the roles as he thought Sirtis would be better suited for the role of the ship's counselor. And as I said at the beginning, Hernandez was rewritten to become Tasha Yar, and that would better suit Denise Crosby. And again, I think that just goes to show Roddenberry's creative genius, because you can't imagine Marina Sirtis with her looks, her beautiful looks, the way she came across on screen, playing a security chief. The role of Commander Worf, the Klingon, required a black actor in order to make the Klingon makeup easier to apply. And originally, I was only expected to be a recurring character. But following the casting of Michael Dorn, and his work in Farpoint, the role was expanded. Will Wheaton was cast as Wesley Crusher, despite having what he considered to be an awful first callback. John Delancey missed deliberately his first audition for Q, as he was appearing as a lead in a play at the time. A second audition was arranged during this lunch break so that he could attend, and he later said that after he auditioned, a big guy walked out, put his hands on my shoulder and said, "You make my words sound better than they are." I said, "Well, you must be the writer." And he said, "I'm Gene Roddenberry." I had absolutely no idea who that was. Colt Meaney was cast in the part of the Con on the ship's battle bridge. And after a further appearance in season 1's episode Lonely Among Us, was given the name Miles Edward O'Brien in season 2, and then went on to join Deep Space Nine. So here's some trivia for you. Patrick Stewart and Colt Meaney are the only two actors to appear in both pilots for The Next Gen and for DS9. Patrick Stewart is the first person to speak on either of those two respective series. Patrick Stewart, obviously, as Captain Jean-Luc Picard in The Next Generation and as Locutus of Borg on DS9. And he starts Farpoint with this. Captain's log. Stardate 41153.7. Our destination is planet Deneb 4, beyond which lies the great unexplored mass of the galaxy. My orders are to examine Farpoint, a station built there by the inhabitants of that world. Meanwhile, I am becoming better acquainted with my new command, this Galaxy-class USS Enterprise. I am still somewhat in awe of its size and complexity. As for my crew, we are short in several key positions, most notably a first officer, but I am informed that a highly experienced man, one Commander William Reicher, will be waiting to join our ship at our Deneb 4 destination. The first bits of dialogue kind of indicate what the show is going to be. You will agree, Data, that Starfleet's orders are difficult. Difficult. Simply solve the mystery of Farpoint Station. As simple as that, says Picard. The one thing that this episode does is it does kind of give you an idea of what the characters are going to be about. Data, the Pinocchio style. The next-gen version of Spock, basically. The immature, the android, the childlike. Counselor Troy, the caring empath, who has got a love affair with Commander William T. Riker. Will Riker, the Captain Kirk of this series. And because that's what he was, right? Will Riker was the equivalent to what Kirk was. Geordie LaForge, the disabled chief engineer, which did what Roddenberry's vision was all about, that disabilities didn't exist anymore by wearing the visor. Dr. Crusher, the female CMO of the relationship. Now, what is really interesting is that as the series carried on and continued, there was a set built for engineering. And the original script didn't include any scenes set in the Enterprise's engine room. But he learned that Paramount was therefore refusing to pay to build an engine room set. So he revised the script to include it because he was told effectively, if it's not in the pilot, you're not having the script, you're not having the set. The creation of Q wasn't the original antagonist in the episode. It was meant to be purely about the space jellyfish and Grappler Zorn and the Bandai. But Michael Pillow once commented that he thought the Q thing came out of a time requirement. But there isn't any question in my mind that the best thing in the show is that Q story. If that had been the other story, it would have been a disappointment. The other thing that comes out of Farpoint is a vision of Roddenberry's where we have Picard arguing for the future of mankind, representing the advocate of humanity to this Q, who puts humanity on trial. And that is, according to Pillar, an extraordinary, philosophically ambitious idea, and it really helps to define why Star Trek is what it is. Without that, it would have been spaceships and monsters and special effects. It would have been Star Wars, right? The saucer separated. It only happened again a handful of occasions, most notably in the Best of Both Worlds Part 1, which we covered with Dan a few weeks ago on the show. And of course, the movie Star Trek Generations. We've got different uniforms being worn, the miniskirts. And a little bit of trivia, Counselor Troy doesn't wear a uniform again until Chain of Command Part 1 in 1992, with the exception of one episode called Future Imperfect, which is set in alternative reality. We talked about the pilots in the finale. The finales of both TNG and DS9 featured Meany and Michael Dorn. Michael Dorn is now the most capped actor to appear in Star Trek, appearing in all 7 years of The Next Generation and 3 years of Deep Space Nine. The episode is the first mention of the Ferengi Alliance as being the next big bads, kind of equivalent to the Klingons. But they weren't taken seriously by the show writers. They weren't taken seriously by the actors who portrayed them. So they became the comic relief. The USS Hood that appears to take Dr. McCoy back is actually a reuse of the Excelsior model from the movies. They originally planned to build a guest ship model that would look more appropriate for that new era, but also be a bit smaller and older than the Enterprise, but they ran out of budget. And what this did was started a trend of reusing movie ships in many next-gen episodes, even though they're supposedly more than 80 years old now. The planned guest ship design was finally reused as the Ambassador class Enterprise C for the next-gen classic episode, Yesterday's Enterprise. Michael Pillar continues to make comments and talks about the fact that he liked the structure of the episode about introducing Reicher, Crusher, and LaForge later on. And when he wrote the pilot for DS9, when he wrote Emissary, he chose to introduce Dax and Bashir in the same way. Marina Sirtis recalled in the bonus features of the movie Nemesis that the critics bloody hated us. I wasn't like that. You know, I loved this show, right? I just loved Next Generation. I thought it was just a great thing. But was it hated? The show was broadcast on 98 independent stations and 112 network affiliates in several different locations, including Dallas, LA, Seattle, Miami. And the stations which were broadcasting Farpoint gained higher ratings than the 4 major networks during prime time. It aired to an audience of 27 million and was immediately called the highest rated syndicated 1-hour drama series on television. A journalist called Jill Lanford from the Herald Journal said she thought it was a resurrection of a legend. She said that she believed the episode was reminiscent of classic Trek episodes like Arena and The Squire of Gothos, and was the perfect vehicle to introduce this new cast. Tom Shales of the Washington Post viewed Kelly's cameo as touching, but he did think that Stewart was a grim, bold crank who would make a better villain. And he felt that Frakes verged on namby-pamby. And then you got Q. The Hollywood Reporter and Den of Geek have rated the episode as one of the most important Picard-focused episodes. And they've also said it's one of the series' best episodes. And in fact, we know now that the upcoming Picard Season 2, airing in January of 2022, I believe, is going to be a direct sequel to Farpoint, which I'm really looking forward to. Its original release of this episode was a feature-length episode in its own right. And when it was first released on VHS in September of 1991, Farpoint was just one feature-length episode on a double tape. It was then released on DVD and split into two parts. In fact, if you watch it on Netflix, it's in two parts as well. Q became so popular that he had his own box set called the Q Continuum, which had Farpoint, Hiding Q, Q Who, and Deja Q. And that was released on Laserdisc and also on VHS. There's no denying that Farpoint was instrumental in getting the next generation off to the races. And it was instrumental in gaining a whole new generation of Star Trek fans and really setting off this new era of Trek. DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, Lower Decks, Section 31, Strange New Worlds. You could say is all thanks to the next generation. What did you think about Encounter at Farpoint? What would you rate it? What did you think of Next Gen? Let me know. And you can do that across our social media. Facebook, Instagram, Retro Chat Podcast. Tweet me at Retro Chat Pod. Visit us on YouTube at Retro Chat Podcast UK. And let us know. Now, if you haven't already listened to it or seen it, last week we released our interview with the star, or one of the stars of California Dreams, J. Anthony Frankie, who played Jake Summers. That's available right now. Please check it out. Big thanks to Jay for taking time out to join me at 6 a.m., I might add, in the morning for that interview. Next time, we're going to be talking more Retro Chat goodness right here on the Retro Chat podcast. I may even be joined by a guest. Who knows? Until then, stay tuned. I've been Andy Evans. We have been exploring the new frontier, the next generation of Star Trek, and we've had an encounter at Farpoint. I will see you all very soon. But please, before I go, one last time, don't forget to join me October 27, 8 o'clock, Quiz Night Live, the Trivia Master Challenge, supporting Julia's House. I will see you all next week. Until then, so long, take care.